Fame makes us believe some people are untouchable, until suddenly they're gone. We grow up watching them shine, young, talented, unstoppable. Their faces fill screens. Their voices define generations. Their names become symbols of success, beauty, rebellion, hope. And somewhere along the way, we start to believe the illusion that fame protects, that youth lasts, that greatness comes with time guaranteed. But history keeps interrupting that fantasy. Again and again, the brightest stars disappear at the very moment they seem to have everything. Careers at their peak, futures wide open, influence just beginning to stretch beyond imagination. One day they are shaping culture, then, without warning, they become memories. Why does this happen so often? Why do the brightest stars burn the fastest? Tonight we are not here to chase rumors or replay headlines. This is not gossip, this is legacy. This is about what happens when human beings are turned into icons before they are allowed to grow old. Behind the applause, the cameras, and the myth, there were real people carrying pressure, loneliness, expectation, and in some cases, unbearable silence. In this story, you'll meet 7 names the world thought it would have forever. A princess loved by millions but protected by no one. Actors whose sensitivity became both their gift and their burden. Musicians who turned pain into art so powerful it still echoes decades later. A cultural giant whose voice reshaped an entire genre. And a hero who carried unimaginable strength in complete silence. We won't rush their endings. We won't reduce their lives to how they died. Instead, we'll ask a harder question. What did the world take from them while they were still alive? Because death doesn't erase influence, it freezes it in time. And once you see that pattern clearly, you may never look at fame the same way again. Hollywood had never seen anything like him before. Before influencers, before global superstardom, before fame learned how to multiply itself, there was James Dean. Not just an actor, but a feeling, a look, a restless energy that seemed to speak directly to a generation that didn't yet know how to explain its anger. He arrived at the exact moment youth stopped wanting to behave. With Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean didn't simply play rebellion, he embodied it. The slouched posture, the defiant stare, the vulnerability hiding beneath bravado. Teenagers didn't watch him. They recognized themselves in him. And Hollywood, sensing something rare, crowned him its first true modern youth icon almost overnight. But fame came faster than wisdom. Dean lived as he acted fast, intense, and dangerously close to the edge. Speed wasn't just a hobby, it was a statement. Risk wasn't recklessness, it was identity. In a culture that worshipped masculinity as danger and freedom as defiance, James Dean became the perfect symbol. Young, fearless, unapologetic. And then at just 24 years old, he was gone. What most people don't realize is that his death didn't end the legend, it created it. James Dean didn't fade, didn't age, didn't disappoint. He never had the chance to stumble, to decline, or to become ordinary. His image froze at its most powerful moment, forever young, forever misunderstood, forever unfinished. Psychologically, that may be his most haunting legacy, because fame arrived before maturity ever could. Before life had time to temper rebellion into wisdom or passion into peace. The world didn't just lose James Dean, it preserved him. And that's the paradox. James Dean never grew old, and that's exactly why he stayed young forever. Hollywood loves loud confidence. But River Phoenix was never built for noise. He was raised far from Hollywood's polished machinery, outside its rules, its illusions, its hunger. From an early age, River carried something rare, a quiet depth. A sensitivity that didn't perform for attention but observed, absorbed, and felt everything. When the camera found him, it wasn't charisma, it captured, it was truth. That truth made him extraordinary. As a child prodigy, River didn't act like someone pretending to be older. He felt older. His performances carried empathy, restraint, and an almost uncomfortable honesty. While other young stars learned how to shine, River learned how to listen. And audiences noticed. Directors noticed. Hollywood noticed. But admiration is not the same as protection. Behind the praise was pressure, relentless, invisible, unforgiving. An industry built to reward toughness quietly tested the limits of someone who was anything but hardened. River cared deeply about the world around him. He practiced quiet activism long before it was fashionable. He spoke softly about injustice, about responsibility, about compassion. Yet that same sensitivity became a liability in a system that thrives on excess and speed. The contradiction was brutal. Hollywood wanted his soul, but not his fragility. It wanted the performance, not the person. And Rivers, still so young, was left navigating adult expectations without adult defenses. Fame didn't amplify his voice. It magnified his vulnerability. Then came the night everything stopped. Not a grand stage, not a final curtain call, just a sudden, devastating moment that sent shockwaves through an industry that had mistaken talent for invincibility. That night, Hollywood didn't just lose a rising star, it lost its conscience. The illusion that brilliance could survive without care shattered in an instant. River Phoenix didn't burn out because he lacked strength. He burned because he felt too much in a world that demanded numbness. And that is the quiet tragedy at the heart of his story. Because the industry rewards strength, but it consumes sensitivity. There are very few people in history whose death felt personal to the entire world. Princess Diana was one of them. From the moment she stepped into the global spotlight, Diana was no longer just a woman, she became a symbol. A fairy tale princess wrapped in royal glamour, photographed endlessly, admired relentlessly, and followed everywhere. Yet behind the jewels, the smiles, and the palace walls was a reality few were allowed to see: fame without privacy, visibility without protection, love without safety. The world adored her, but the world never left her alone. Every movement became a headline. Every emotion became speculation. The media didn't simply report on Diana's life, it lived inside it. Cameras waited outside her home. Strangers debated her pain. And slowly the line between public figure and private human being disappeared. She was watched constantly, yet understood rarely. What made Diana extraordinary wasn't her title, it was her empathy. She reached for people others avoided. She touched the sick, the forgotten, the stigmatized without gloves, without fear, without calculation. In doing so, she shattered the emotional distance expected of royalty. And that closeness, the very thing that made her beloved, also made her vulnerable. Because when you open your heart to the world opens back, without mercy. Behind the royal image was profound emotional isolation. A woman surrounded by millions, yet often deeply alone. Trapped between tradition and transformation, duty and identity, spectacle and self. Diana didn't fit the system she was born into, and the system never truly learned how to protect her. So when she died, the grief wasn't abstract, it was intimate. People didn't just mourn a princess, they mourned a woman who felt real. Someone who laughed, struggled, loved, and suffered in plain sight. Someone who made the powerful human and the human powerful. That's why her loss shook the world. She wasn't famous because she was royal. She was royal because she was human. And in that humanity lies both her legacy and her tragedy. Some voices are technically perfect. Others are emotionally flawless. Janis Joplin belonged to the second kind. From the first note, her voice didn't aim to impress, it bled. It cracked, rasped, and screamed with the honesty that felt almost uncomfortable. Janis didn't sing about pain. She carried it directly into the microphone. Every performance sounded like a confession, every song like a wound being reopened in public. And the world loved her for it. On stage, Janis was electric, wild hair, fearless presence, a voice that could shake a room into silence. She looked free, untouchable, like someone who had conquered her demons and turned them into art. But when the lights went down, that illusion collapsed. Off stage, Janis was painfully lonely. Fame surrounded her, yet connection escaped her. Applause filled arenas, but silence waited backstage. That contradiction slowly became unbearable. Music was her refuge, but also her trap. The more pain she poured into sound, the more the world demanded it. Suffering became part of the performance. Vulnerability became a brand. And without realizing it, Janis was teaching millions how to survive heartbreak, while quietly losing her own battle with it. Her name would later be linked to something the world calls the 27 Club. But that label misses the point. This wasn't a myth, it was a warning. A pattern of young artists pushed beyond their limits, celebrated for their pain, and left alone with it once the applause faded. Janis didn't disappear because she lacked talent. She disappeared because no one stopped to ask how much that talent was costing her. Her music was a cry for help disguised as brilliance. And it worked, just not in the way she needed. She sang pain so we wouldn't have to. But when it came time to hear hers, no one was listening. Fame is supposed to be a way out. For the notorious big, it was supposed to be an escape plan. Born into poverty, surrounded by limitation and danger, Biggie didn't just dream of success, he needed it. Music became his lifeline. His words painted streets the world had ignored, turning survival into poetry and struggle into rhythm. With a voice both commanding and intimate, he rose faster than anyone expected. In a matter of years, he went from the margins to the center of culture, redefining what hip-hop could sound like, look like, and mean. For a moment it worked. Money arrived, fame followed, power seemed real. From the outside, it looked like the story had a happy ending, proof that talent could outrun circumstance. But fame has limits. It can change addresses, not histories. And it cannot erase old enemies, old tensions, or the gravity of a life shaped by the streets. Success didn't silence danger, it amplified it. The more visible Biggie became, the harder it was to separate the artist from the environment he came from. Rivalries hardened. Violence followed attention. Every move carried weight, every appearance risk. The streets he once narrated never fully released him, and the industry that profited from his voice wasn't built to protect him from that collision. Then came the moment that froze everything. Not a gradual fade, not a long goodbye. Just a sudden end that stunned a culture and left questions echoing louder than answers. Hip-hop didn't just lose a star, it lost a storyteller whose voice still felt unfinished. And yet something unexpected happened. The conflict ended, but the legacy didn't. Biggie's music outlived the violence that surrounded it. His influence grew even in absence. Lines written in survival became scripture for generations that followed. Because his story proves a hard truth, success doesn't always mean escape. Sometimes it only changes the size of the spotlight when the past catches up. Some actors play characters. Heath Ledger became them. From the beginning, Heath Ledger wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing truth. Every role was approached like a deep dive, not a performance. He studied movements, silences, contradictions. He searched for the emotional core others avoided. And the deeper he went, the more extraordinary his work became. But immersion has a cost. When Ledger took on the Joker, it wasn't just another role, it was a transformation. He isolated himself. He rewired his voice, his posture, his laughter. He didn't act madness, he explored it, lived with it, let it settle in his mind. The result was undeniable brilliance, terrifying, unforgettable, historic. The world watched in awe, unaware of the psychological toll being paid behind closed doors. Perfection is dangerous when it demands everything. Ledger wasn't satisfied with surface-level greatness. He wanted to disappear completely, to leave no trace of himself behind. But somewhere along that journey, the boundary between character and self began to blur. The intensity that fueled his genius also disrupted his peace. Sleep became elusive, rest felt undeserved, and the pressure to live up to his own standard grew heavier with every performance. This is where art and self-destruction quietly collide. The industry celebrates commitment but rarely asks what it costs. It rewards transformation but doesn't teach recovery. And for someone as devoted as Heath Ledger, there was no clear off switch. The role ended, the camera stopped, but the weight of it lingered. Then came the silence. Not the kind written into scripts, but the kind that follows loss. A shock that rippled through cinema and left audiences questioning how something so brilliant could also be so fragile. Because Heath Ledger's story reminds us of a haunting truth. Some roles don't end when the cameras stop. And sometimes the greatest performances are also the most dangerous. The world knew him as a hero, but the bravest part of Chadwick Boseman was something no one could see. While millions watched him command screens with strength, precision, and quiet authority, Chadwick was fighting a battle in silence. No announcements, no public appeals for sympathy, no attempt to turn pain into spectacle. Instead, he chose dignity. He chose privacy. And he chose to keep showing up for his work, for his people, and for a legacy bigger than himself. That choice changed everything. At a time when visibility is currency, Chadwick Boseman did the unthinkable. He carried illness without letting it define him. Film after film, appearance after appearance, he continued to inspire millions who had no idea what it was costing him. To the outside world, he looked strong, focused, unbreakable. Inside, he was enduring something few could imagine, and yet he never let it harden him. Chadwick understood the weight of representation. He knew what his roles meant to children, to families, to entire communities finally seeing themselves reflected with honor. So even as his body weakened, his purpose sharpened. Every performance became intentional. Every moment mattered. Strength for him was not about power, it was about perseverance with grace. When his death was announced, the shock was universal. Not because he had been struggling, but because no one knew. Grief poured out across the world, mixed with awe. How could someone carry so much and say so little? That question is his legacy. Chadwick Boseman didn't ask to be remembered for tragedy. He left behind something far more enduring, an example of courage, without noise, resilience, without performance, and strength defined not by what you show, but by what you endure quietly. Because true heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear courage. When we look back at stories like these, it's tempting to see them as separate tragedies, different lives, different industries, different endings. But when you step back far enough, a pattern begins to emerge. And once you see it, it's impossible to unsee. Behind every early death is the same invisible pressure. Expectation without rest. Attention without protection. Success without space to fail to heal or to slow down. These people weren't just talented, they were projected upon. Turned into symbols before they were allowed to be human. And the higher they rose, the faster everything around them moved. Fame doesn't wait, it accelerates. It compresses. Time amplifies emotion and multiplies consequences. Triumph arrives early. Mistakes become permanent. Private struggles turn public. And collapse, when it comes, arrives without warning. In a world that rewards speed and spectacle, there is rarely room for pause. Especially for those the culture decides it cannot live without. But this story isn't only about them, it's also about us. We glorify icons, then consume them. We celebrate vulnerability, then demand more of it. We applaud authenticity, then punish weakness. Every headline clicked, every rumor shared, every moment of pain turned into entertainment quietly feeds the machine that pushes people faster than they were ever meant to go. And when the unthinkable happens, we act surprised. We say they were taken too soon, but the truth is more uncomfortable. They didn't just die young. They lived fast because the world demanded it. Because slowing down would have meant disappearing. Because rest was mistaken for weakness. Because being human was never part of the contract. This final chapter is not about blame, it's about recognition. Because until we acknowledge the pattern, we will keep repeating it. Different names, same story. As this story comes to an end, one truth lingers heavier than all the others. Maybe the tragedy isn't that they died too young, but that we never learned how to protect them while they were alive. Each name we've explored wasn't just famous, they were human. They carried talent pressure, expectation, and silence in ways most of us will never fully understand. We celebrated their brilliance, admired their strength, and consumed their stories in real time, but protection. That part always came too late, and now their lives exist only in echoes. If this documentary made you pause, reflect, or see fame differently, even for a moment, take a second to like this video. It may seem small, but it tells the algorithm that stories like these matter, that deeper human conversations deserve space on this platform. I also want to hear from you. Comment below which story affected you the most and why. Was it the silence, the pressure, the loneliness behind the spotlight? Your voice adds meaning to this conversation, and someone reading your comment might feel less alone because of it. If you're drawn to documentaries that go beyond headline stories about fame, legacy, psychology, and the unseen cost of success, subscribe to the channel. This isn't about chasing trends, it's about understanding the human stories behind them. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode in Celebrity Stories. Each one dives deeper into the lives we think we know and the truths we often overlook. Because fame promises forever, but rarely delivers it. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay human.